With the mission to keep as many men on as many guns for as long as possible, we called him Doc. Welcome to Combat Vet Vision. And now your host, Aaron Chief Seabird.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Hey, welcome to Combat Vet Vision. Hey, this is a place where I really get to talk about my story, my opinion, my issues as a combat vet, dealing with PTSD, dealing with my physical injuries after being hit with a mortar round April of 2006, and being to Iraq three separate times, three separate combat tours. It's also a place where I get my sponsor supporters, volunteers, other combat vets to tell their stories, their opinions, their issues, their situations, and our transition, how we're doing in life, things of that nature. There's a place for a chance to give another combat vet an opportunity to maybe relate to something, think about something, help them pave a pathway, a place in life, whatever that might look like. But today's story, I'm going to talk about something that's kind of always on the agenda of things, meaning it's always on everybody's mind, whether you want to believe in it or not. You never know what's around each corner. Your life's going in a certain direction. Um, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of ways everybody has to play in life. A certain way to play a game, a certain way to play life, a certain way to play directions in life, where you live, situational awareness, a bunch of different things. If you turn on the news, it's the worst place on the planet, the United States, full of guns, everybody's killing everybody. That's what it looks like. That's the stigma. PTSD is a stigma. If someone says, "Hey, I got PTSD," hey, everybody's looking at you like you're the next guy to go. Excuse the word; it's probably not even the proper word. Postal, because that in itself is a stigma, and it's an agenda. It's whether it's true or false agenda. It's still an agenda. My agenda right now to educate the public, give everybody an opportunity to tell their story as they see it, with their opinions, their biases, their frustrations, whatever the situation is, their chaos. Because so often that's the way. Chaos after going to combat, living in chaos, and realizing that everything in life in combat is one moment away from life or death. Coming back to the United States of America and putting that out doesn't go far. I often say this to a lot of my combat vets, a lot of my buddies, you know, what we do in combat, how we conduct ourselves in combat, how combat affected us, how it did, has no place in society. Meaning, you're never going to really be able to talk about it freely to those that you love. We're always going to have to maintain a filter because the agenda is to keep peace and tranquility as best we can in the United States of America, chasing the all American dream. And someone tried to take the all American dream and say, hey, it's not, that's not what people are pursuing anymore. Like, the purpose of life in America is not to pursue the American dream. Why wouldn't it be? What is the American dream? What is your American dream? So we talk about this. This is information control. Is it altered to fit the narrative? I think it is in most cases. I think even for me to wait to tell you this title, unless you've read it, what was my agenda? To warm you up to it, to give you a chance to kind of filter it, maybe think about it. And the reason why I think about it like this, and because I see so many of my fellow combat brothers thinking about this, is because sometimes things don't make sense. And we look at information as black and white in a lot of ways. We want the information now. It should have some sort of order. It should have some sort of logic. It should have some sort of purpose. and it should have some sort of endpoint that is an effective measurement of success. But we don't have that anymore. When I grew up as a kid, I think I watched the news in a non-biased format, meaning the news had to do a lot of research, meaning there was a lot of people professionally doing their art. They were telling a story based off of two sides. And sometimes it was very, very, very black or white, or very good or bad, meaning one side was good, one side was bad. And you got to hear the sides of both, and the news left it alone, not putting their 2 cents on it, not putting their this on it or that on it. And now I think we pick our news by the politics we uphold or the situation that fits our narratives in life. I grew up in a religious situation, uh, grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, actually, most of my life. And I got to understand the Bible through the eyes, through the word of a Jehovah's Witness. Very close to Christianity in a lot of ways, very open, a lot more open to interpretation of the Bible in a lot of ways, but very strict in behavioral and moral and subject issues. But as I got more and more understanding of it, you know, I'm a firm believer in God, but I feel like religion is somewhat tainted by man's desire to steer certain directions, certain ways. So sometimes I'm a little skeptical when it comes to religion, and rightfully so. We're humans. We have the right, and we're free humans in the United States of America, and in a lot of places in the world, to believe how we will and to think about things in a critical, logical way that we can look at it. We all have our biases. We all have directions we're going. We all have things that we want to do in life. We all have things that we want to try, things that we want to do, this, and that. But personal responsibility is like if I say and do, but I'm counterintuitive to that on one side, or I don't want somebody to see me doing something on this side, that could steer some people to think, oh, he's not who he says he is. There's a lot of critical thinking in that. Now, when news comes out and they tell you things, they have a certain amount of control. Like I have control over my podcast here to a certain extent. Sitch Radio manages it. Brian Colburn has all these show management pieces. I abide by certain rules and regulations. Um, However, being a podcaster has a lot more freedom than a broadcaster on the TV network or a news network that has to be responsible for that. I'm responsible for my opinion. I'm responsible for what I'm saying. The word fake news in its sense means, can you believe in it? And I'm not sure we fully can believe in it like I used to as a kid. And that's just me. That's my this is my opinion. The effects of today's society kind of lean towards an agenda. I mean that in a lot of ways. I mean, there's a lot of things we could take a look at. You know, right now there's a news agency being sued for making claims against the voting booth industry, stating that basically that they went out of their way to kind of say that these booths didn't produce or didn't function correctly and had the ability to um, make it so voters could falsify their self and basically vote how they want, and it could also calculate and do some stuff. So there's a lot of problems with being able to say something about something and having direct proof of that. The concept in my mind And everybody's like, hey, you know, why should I have to show an ID if I want to vote if I'm in America? Well, there's plenty of people in America that aren't Americans. Does that mean that they can just go vote because they have an ID? I don't know. I'm not there. But I guarantee if you want to buy a bottle of booze today, you can't do it without an ID that says you're over the age of 18. That makes sense to me. What doesn't make sense to me is not having to show an ID. And by making that statement alone, I'm telling Americans that they can't vote, which is really bizarre to me. And I'm saying that because it makes sense. But then there's Americans that don't have IDs because they chose not to get them. So, but then these are also Americans that some Americans that are driving cars without licenses and lo- and driving is a privilege, but we don't talk about that too much anymore. We treat it more like a right. Like, hey, people have to do this, people have to do that. So when you box all these things up, it looks like I'm being biased or it looks like I'm this, but I'm just asking for some personal responsibility. But because we do that, we're creating an angle where things are not allowed to happen in the news if that's the case, right? So we need to keep it really crazy. And there's a lot of programs in place in the United States, in the world, that are put in place to kind of solve problems. But have they ever really solved problems, or did they create a market that's so great that if they solve the problem, they'll run themselves out of the market? There's no longer going to be a need for their services. So those services are not needed. And I say this because for the longest time, we've been having this border problem, yet everybody has a solution to it. But millions of people cross that border every year. And I don't know. I'm not there. I didn't go there personally, but I know because if some people go down there and they start taking pictures and they're showing people coming across the border, they're doing all this. So I know this, right? And there's certain benefits for those people because how are they surviving otherwise? They can't just be surviving on camping alone. So there's a lot of programs in place to keep it motivated. So now because those people are in America, do they get to vote? I don't know. I don't know. But there's some agendas out there. There are some altered concepts. There's somebody controlling the information enough to keep it away from you or to point you in a direction or to say, hey, this person's so important that they outweigh all the other people that are important. And we're going to make this one person seem like they're so oppressed or so, distraught or so laid down that, everybody else's importance needs to shut the heck down, even though whatever you got going on, there's a lot of personal responsibility involved. There's a lot of this, there's a lot of that, but there's a lot of stigmatism to that. So whenever you hear certain statements, certain things, the automatic thought in your mind is already to think negatively upon the situation that was positive for so many years of our lives. And there's always going to be some bad apples out there to fit the narrative. Like they will make one item look so big that it looks like everybody is part of the problem. But you got to ask yourself whenever you're doing anything in life, are you part of the problem or part of the solution? So many people are not using their turn signals that turn signals should be optional. But thank goodness they're not because it's a way to communicate. It's a way to be kind of kind, considerate to other people. But we don't want to talk about kind and considerate. So when you talk about all these different things, um, you know, in combat, every decision we made was life and death. So as combat vets, when we come back, we try to justify this stuff in our heads, like why are you not taking care of the things that you need to, the small things, because the small things matter because they lead to bigger things. And we're told this in the military. We're told this. Is it brainwashing? Is it agenda wise? I don't think so. I think it's we walk a little different sometimes. Our swagger might be a little hard. It's okay to be a man. It's okay to be a woman. And those definitions are very strict. It's okay to be whatever you want to be, but if you're stepping on my ability to enjoy the freedoms that I have as a man, then I'm gonna have a problem with it. And rightfully so. We all have our freedoms. But somehow or another, someone has confused those freedoms. Someone has confused those agendas. Someone has kind of swept them under the rug and created something else out of it. And how is that possible? Because they have a lot of activism going on. And why do you not have a lot of military activism? Because we've already done our part. We have done a service. We've gone and done this thing. And there is nothing that's going to be more purposeful than our military responsibility while we were in. And when it comes down to it, for those who've gone to combat, nothing's going to be more thrilling or, you know, politically incorrect. As my buddy who's a sniper, that they took away the sniper school because it's not an important job anymore, even though on the battlefield right now it's being proven otherwise. Sniper schools are shut down in the Marine Corps. Uh, they're about to be completely. No more classes anyway. Um, Hunting man is the most thrilling hunt on the planet. But wait, did you say hunting man? In the military, we can say this. In the military, we do have hunters. In the military, I've had my hunts. We've had to do missions where we're on the prowl. We're waiting to surprise the enemy. We're being involved in some situation where we can collect duty. We can collect fire at any given moment, and we have, and I have. So for me to tell you about this, it's kind of messing things up, right? You might have a different look at me now, but I'm asking people to be open-minded enough to find joy in what happens in their lives, what surrounds their lives, and pace yourself just enough or more, but pace yourself at a pace where you can still enjoy life and your family and still make something happen that needs to happen in a better direction, in a positive direction, and in a right direction. What is the right direction? Did you say right direction? What's your definition of right? Is it morally right, legally right? Were you ordered to do it? We got to weigh all that out, just like the news. We got to weigh out, is this good, bad, indifferent? What is it? But but know this, there's a market, a really strong market for the worst things on the planet. For the longest time, you know, pot has been, marijuana, whatever you want to call it, an herbal supplement has been considered a drug. But some people want to label it as, an herb. It helps me. I can eat it. Oh, I can eat tomatoes all day long, and they're not going to dilate my pupils or cause some sort of mind difference in my brain. And what's the dose? What's your dose? But America's so set in some of these directions. The legalization of that has created an environment where you've limited yourself to um, a spot, a spot away from a job that might say, "Hey, it's cool, it's legal, but I can't have you driving a forklift." I mean, have you seen some of the forklift um, memes and drivings and crazy things that happen? I mean, whole warehouses have gone out of whack. But you got to get drug tested after something like that happens. You crash a vehicle, you do something, you harm somebody. If your mind is not in order because you're taking your meds or you're taking your supplements or your herbs, you've put it on your salad, whatever it is, what's the agenda? My agenda is not to stop you from doing that. But the reality of it is personal responsibility says we can't have you driving on the freeway because it's possible. Alcohol's the other one. Hey, it's like water. It's got a little bit of alcohol in it. Whatever you want to say about beer, right? Uh, so the agenda of it all is personal responsibility. I want to go through life and I want to say, hey, look, I want to collect all this data. I want to make good decisions. I want to understand the decisions I make. Yeah, I like to eat. I'm a little bigger than normal. I don't, I don't, I don't look at the fork and say, hey, it's the metal that's causing this problem in me. This metal fork or this plastic fork. No, it's my hand that's putting it into my mouth. And I understand that. So I don't want to make any excuses. At the same time, I think we all make them for certain reasons, whatever that might be. And we all want to point out these different directions, which is fine. You want to tell me that pot's the greatest thing on the planet? It's better than alcohol. I'll give you that. It still doesn't make it okay for you to drive. Doesn't make it okay for you to work at certain jobs because if you're going to do that during the day or any time, you might be good. If you only do it at night. Hey, but if they have to test you to keep you on a job, don't be upset about it. Understand it. Realize it. Find a job that's going to work for you, or don't work. And that's where we're at right now. A lot of people just don't want to work, especially after COVID. All these companies had a hard time hiring people, and they're still having a hard time. In my day when I joined the military, it used to be, hey, to have a really good job, you got to have a a college degree. And now it's so different because I think there's so many problems. They just want you to be able to tell them that, hey, I can show up to work on time. You want to be successful? This is what you need to do in an interview. I can show up to work on time, and I'm always going to be a team player, and you can depend on me. Meaning, I'm not going to miss work anytime. I'm going to be on point. I'm going to be there. I'm going to fill in when nobody else wants to fill in. Not that I'm going to volunteer, but I'm always going to be ready. If you could say that in an interview, you got a pretty good shot. Oh, you don't have a high school diploma, but you're dependable? Oh, okay, we'll hire you. And you can pass a drug test, you're hired. So is that my agenda to tell you this? No, my agenda is to pace yourself to let you think about some things, but you can blame it on society. You can say, hey, I'm a product of society. I think we all are to a point. But eventually we have to start thinking on our own. We have to educate ourselves in different manners because I'm not sure the school education is really pushing out enough information, and I'm not sure the environment might not be suitable for a good learning experience. So some of these learning experiences you're going to have to do on your own so that you can make better decisions, better formatted directions that make a difference. So I'm asking you to stay open-minded. I'm open-minded. I may sound like I'm a little closed-minded about some things, but I'm not. I'm open-minded about it. But just like anything, if someone says, "Hey, man, how much food did you eat today?" Well, I ate over my amount, probably. I'm pretty sure I did today, but I'm not wanting to make any excuses for it. But if somebody asked me my dose on marijuana, 0. But what is my desired outcome from that? Is to stay focused, to be high on life, to enjoy life on a level that I want to pace it at my pace. And I don't need anybody to say, "Hey, man, you should just try it," blah, blah, blah. Maybe so. It might help with this, it might help with that. Unless it's a cure, I really don't want it. If it's a cure, then let's talk about it. But I don't think there's a lot of cures out there, especially for all the injuries that I got from all the shrapnel that I took from, the pain that I feel. But I manage my pain through mindset, through yoga, through the things in life that I want to be able to enjoy. Walking on flat land, uh, trying to do things that I can, yoga or some aerobic type exercises. Those things help me out. They help stretch my ligaments, my joints, my muscles. They get me involved. And then doing some swimming and stuff like that. The underwater treadmill was a great piece of gear. I talk about it all the time. And that was free for our combat vets through Tri-City Wellness Center. It's just a really good opportunity. Now at Wounded Warrior Battalion West, it's there for the combat vets, the vets. And we don't have too many combat vets anymore, so the injured and the ill. So this is all about small efforts in a direction of support for myself and for others. That's what this agenda is. I only have the information that I have. I don't have all the information. I just have enough to pace myself. And as I pace myself through life, I like to bring a few people along with me. And even then, I'm not there to push anybody in any direction. I'm there to listen to you. I'm there to um, I talk about it a lot. Having the PTSD Foundation of America, Camp Hope in Houston, Texas, which is the backbone of almost everything that I do to be able to reach out to combat vets and say, hey, man, I know we can talk about it. I know we have a warrior group on Tuesdays. I know we have all these different things. It's a faith based program, but I'm not here to push any faith based down your throat. At the same time, if you really need it, let's get you to Camp Hope in Texas for 6 to 9 months. And then hopefully we get you back into society doing something good for yourself and others. But these are all small little pieces. These are all little angles that you got to steer yourself into. And then I have Warrior Build Foundation. Warrior Build Foundation. How cool is that? If you don't, it's vocational recreational support. So it has a softball team that plays every Thursday night. It has a music jam session that goes on every week. It houses the Southern California chapter of the PTSD Foundation so that we can do our groups there at the facility, as well as hybrid over the internet. It has a welding class. It allows the guys to come in and learn how to work on the race vehicles. It has full-on race teams that go down and race the Baja 1000, the 500, sometimes the San Felipe 250, the Men 400, Vegas to Reno, just to name a few. Then it has a couple other events throughout the year that end up being some really cool, exciting things. King of the Hammers, some other really cool things to kind of get involved in. So the organizations that I involve myself in, the letters that I write, saturate me in my care, saturate me in moving forward in a positive direction with my fellow combat vets. And I spend a lot of my day reaching out and having crazy conversations that would be crazy to most people. But is that my agenda? Think of it as a crazy conversation or a real conversation that matters. That's the agenda. The agenda of this doesn't matter. Maybe not, and it doesn't have to. It matters to me. Everything I do matters to me. This is my life. This isn't a job. This isn't like something I have to do. None of the things I do now are something I have to do. It's something that I pace myself at so that I can enjoy my life in saturation of what matters. And that's it. That's my agenda. I'm not here to make $1 million anytime soon. Um, if that's a side effect someday somehow, so be it. But will it be used for other purposes to make better opportunities for other combat vets? It will be. It will be. My time, my effort. It's not. It's not about me. It's about helping somebody else. Sometimes I get a lot out of it. I do. It is about me, but the agenda is about what makes a difference. Hey, if we got a PSA, we'll put that up right now, and I'll come back and I'll say some final things, and we'll get on with it.
Hi, I'm Mike Richmond of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs with this message for veterans. Are you seeking to honor those who have served and sacrificed for their country? Visit the Veterans Legacy Memorial. This digital platform, run by VA's National Cemetery Administration, is dedicated to the memory of nearly 4.5 million veterans interred at VA's national cemeteries, VA's grant-funded tribal, state, and territory cemeteries, and 2 U.S. National Park Service cemeteries. The memorial's interactive features allow people to remember veterans by posting tributes and comments, uploading images, and sharing a veteran's military timeline, achievements, biographical information, historical documents, and more. Over 45,000 submissions have been made to the existing profile pages since the site was launched. That's the Veterans Legacy Memorial. I'm Mike Richmond.
Hey, thanks for the PSA from the VA. You know, that's another thing. What is the purpose of that PSA on my podcast? The VA selected my podcast as one that they kind of recommended, that they find it interesting, they find that it works, or it's doing something that it needs to do. So does everybody always have a great experience with the VA? And they always want to talk about the bad experiences, but sometimes you have a good experience. Sometimes you get all your gear, you get all your medical care. A lot of guys are getting a lot of things done. The appointments are long. There's all kinds of reasons to complain and bitch about the VA. But the bottom line is the VA also is tied to the amount of money you get as your benefits. So I think that makes it very difficult, but it's a necessary thing. So as much as you don't want to say, "Hey, I need to go to the VA and do all these things," because I will check and ask you, "Did you go through this class, Montrum, uh, all these different other cool classes, Mind Wellness, some other ones?" Those classes are there to really kind of help focal your mind, especially with the mindset. Um, but their agendas are not group based. Their agenda is a class because they don't want you to spark your or trigger your PTSD or trigger somebody else's by telling your story. And because there's so many different versions of veterans that are dealing with different uh, traumas, different PTSDs, then they may not want you to speak on that behalf. So that's why designated groups for the purpose of whatever your PTSD is related to is so important. If you get involved in it, or a group that you get together and create that kind of momentum, it becomes super important because not everybody should be involved in your PTSD story or know it. Um, Maybe some a little bit in different pieces, different ways. But when it really comes down to it, those that can move forward together can heal together because they have similar experiences. Those are going to be important. So it's really easy to be upset at the VA. I was upset with it because I went there and I was like, man, had this great class, but I didn't get to drop anything off. I didn't get to tell anything about my story. I got to answer a couple of questions and that was it. But then I realized what it was. It's a class. And once I realized that, I still have my group on Tuesdays where I really get to dump a bunch of stuff off. So just stay good to yourself. Stay paceful on yourself and your family and whatever else. And find those places where you really need to drop off some stuff. And remember, someone's controlling the information, and we can only control what we can control. But it's always nice to see that we're always thinking about it. We're thinking about, hey, how screwed up is this statement? So many titles on news articles lead you to some rabbit hole, and you'll click on it. It's giant clickbait. It doesn't even let you get to the article, and you're like, what is this going on? And I'm just going to put Google on point right here, because when I'm on my phone and Google has an article, a lot of them I click and it wants me to, you know, give up my cookies, and it wants to take me and ask me a bunch of other questions that have nothing to do. And then when I'm reading the article, it actually isn't what it says on the title. So I really get tired of that. So just wanted to put that out there. Hey, this is Aaron Siebert. Lucky to be alive after being hit with a mortar round April 2006. Retired Navy chief. Till next time, strength and honor. Out.